Our next speaker needs little introduction, one of our trustees and pioneers, Mr. Andrew Carruthers.
Great. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm pleased to say that if you survive your third talk from a fund manager, you can genuinely say you are an entrepreneur. So, I'm here to talk a little bit about Novastar Ventures, which I'm pleased to say, actually, as a trustee of TBN, is an outgrowing, in some respects, of this TBN community of which we're all a part today. If I can work the machinery properly. A little summary, just for those of you who haven't heard of us. Novastar Ventures is a venture capital fund, so not private equity, venture capital, focused on developing and growing what we're calling breakthrough businesses that can transform consumer markets at the base of the economic pyramid in East Africa. So what that means is we take the riskier end of the investment spectrum and we aim it at the mass consumer market, which is growing rapidly in East Africa, but it's a low-income market. The fund size is targeted to be about an 80 million fund maximum. We are, I think, a week or two away from actually closing at just north of 40 million in the next 2 weeks, as I said. I really want to talk a little bit about how Novastar came to pass, because in many ways it's to encourage you in networking through the TB, the Transformational Business Network. So I myself am a venture capitalist. After building an early-stage venture capital firm, Spark Ventures, which some of you may have heard of in this country at least. We did things like lastminute.com, notinthehighstreet.com, Moshi Monsters. Any of you got kids? You'll have heard of those probably. I was interested in trying to deploy VC-style strategies to build enterprises that could provide basic goods and services that benefit the markets at the base of the pyramid. And so I started looking for like minds and met Kim. Who's gone? Where is he? He was here a moment ago. Kim Tan. He and I met in 2007, at which point he promptly signed me up for TBN and made me a trustee. So I've been locked in ever since. And then in 2011, Kim introduced me to Steve Beck, who's sitting here in the room with us today, with whom he had been investing in a number of businesses which demonstrated this venture style of investment. And we began to work up a concept that could form the basis of a fund. And the aim being catalyzing businesses that serve the mass low-income market. But over that time, I'm pleased to say, thinking more widely has moved on from grants as the only solution to the problems of poverty, and interest has grown in promoting the private sector through sustainable enterprise, which is what we're all about here, as you know, to deliver these benefits instead. And I think still in the room today is Liz Patterson, if she's here. Fantastic, provided a fantastic leadership at Department for International Development, about whom we've heard, I think, lots of great things today. Actually, the interventions of DFID have been fantastic in promoting enterprise-led solutions to poverty. And largely due to her initiative, DFID launched a $100 million DFID Impact Fund, which is being administered by the Commonwealth Development Corporation, again represented here, I think Marius Cirillo is in the room somewhere, who put out a bid in early 2013 for managers to volunteer to manage a fund, an impact fund. Last month, CDC announced their intention to lead the investment into Novastar, I'm pleased to say, and we should be, and with that interest, we've been able to attract interest, as Marius, from other investors, which has been fantastic. So DFID have really played a catalytic role through the CDC. And actually, since then, Jean-François Leprince, also in the room from the European Investment Bank, will be leading the charge for a similar impact fund, which is 100 million euros. And the great thing about that is that this means the public institutional investment community is getting behind this impact sector. And we heard a little earlier from Media, Vineet Butra, who may still be here, but they were leading in many respects 6 years ago. But the great news is we've now got the public institutions following suit. So that's just to encourage you all to network like mad. You might find somebody with whom to build a business while you're here. What I'm here to talk about, though, is what we're trying to achieve. And then I'll give you some stories about some of the investments we made, just briefly. I'm only here for 20 minutes. And then you can hear from the real champions, who are the entrepreneurs that follow after me. Essentially, what we're trying to do is find what we call it's a classic venture-style business, a business that can grow to an enormous scale very quickly by serving a massive market. We just happens that in the case of the emerging markets, the mass market is a low-income market. So there's a nice alignment between what would be a venture strategy, which is seeking a scale market, and hitting the impact objectives of benefiting low income. The way we want to do that is by meeting demand at the base of the economic pyramid for basic goods and services, and that includes anything. And people are spending already, as we'll come on to later, $50 billion and northwards per annum on primary education amongst people earning less than $2 a day. They're big markets. We've all heard about that book, The Fortune at the Base of the Economic Pyramid. And what we intend to do is try and shape, join, expand, and accelerate those markets rather than seeking to create new ones. So venture capital in the global north tends to be about uncovering new market segments. In the global south, I think the opportunity is there to replace inefficient market operators with much more efficient alternatives. And the real way we're going to do that is by addressing the twin problems of access and affordability. Basically, it's about price and accessibility of these basic goods and services. And the way you do that, really, is to find innovative business models that can adapt some of the technologies. You've all heard of M-Pesa, I'm sure, in East Africa. That's a fantastic platform. It's now being used in many small businesses as a friction-free cash collection mechanism. And through things like those technologies and new business models, we can widen the market access to the base of the pyramid, which is typically a very difficult market to reach. We can also reduce the cost and price and improve the quality. So it should be a triple win. And the object is, therefore, to be able to generate double-digit financial returns whilst also having a very large-scale social impact in that low-income market. And I think that's the really holy grail here. And my predecessor was speaking about unlocking sources of capital that would never normally invest in Africa. If we can show profitable ways to improve the lives at the base of the economic pyramid, I think we'll unlock a wall of capital, and that would be very exciting. So instead of talking about investment strategies any further, let me just give you a few stories that hope to illustrate this. Since 2009, Steve and Kim led the charge, but I joined in a little bit later, as I said. We've made 5 investments, and we have one coming down the track. Bridge International Academies, I'll speak to in a minute, which is based in Kenya. It's a low-cost chain of primary schools. We did 4Afri, which was a mobile media business, which shot up spectacularly well to 6 million weekly users in about a year, and then collapsed when the government got frightened about the media influence that the company had. Paradigm's a fuel-efficient cook stove business. Sanergy, I'll touch on in a minute. We've got M-Farm, which is a commodities exchange for small-scale farmers. And coming down the track, we have Garoom Motors, which is a car assembly business where each car is a business on wheels. Let me just touch on 2 of those. Some of you will have heard this story before, so forgive me for repeating it, but it does illustrate our investment thesis well. So we look at the left at the state school system, and in this case it's Kenya, but it's representative of many markets in and around the region. Typically you have 3rd percentile pupil achievement. The universal free education, although supposedly free at the point of consumption, very rarely is. There's often a desk fee of $1 a month levied, or an exam fee, or a uniform fee, or some form of informal fees, which means that it turns out to be about costing between $2 and $5 per child per month. Problem is, in those state systems where there's no accountability to the parents, very often up to 50% of the teaching contact hours is lost through simple teacher absenteeism and neglect. So the kids are not getting the time in front of the teachers that they should be. And as I said, there's no accountability to parents, and yet it's a $50 billion global market. So what that really means is that people who are on low incomes are spending a huge proportion of their disposable income on this basic service, and what they're getting for that money is very poor quality. And so Steve met Jay Kimmelman, the founder of this business, in Heathrow Airport, I think 2009. And they were talking about franchising schools. Jay had one school at the time. He'd been a successful entrepreneur in the US, sold his business, EduSoft, very well, and was looking for his next business opportunity and decided he was going to focus in on primary education. He was after that $50 billion market. So he started working on a really innovative business model, which was about reducing the complex task of teaching to a simplified task. So he scripted every lesson plan down to the word so that he could allow teachers who were not fully qualified to deliver it. That brought the cost of delivery down, and he measured the performance of the children regularly, every 2 weeks or so. And if they weren't up to scratch, it was usually the teacher's fault, and he remedied it. So he became very market-focused. He charged about $6 per child a month, a bit of a premium over what they'd be paying anyway. But the consequence of which is being able to achieve a performance which exceeds any other alternative, whether state or private, by between 18 or 100%. 18% in maths, 100% in literary skills. The formula has been so successful. He basically gives a try before you buy. So every parent gets 1 month of free education for their child before they have to start paying the school fees. They can usually tell immediately that their child is learning more rapidly, as a consequence of which they sign up, almost 90-odd% sign up for their kids to stay. The success of the formula has been so immense that he's now opening a school every 3 or 4 working days. He opened 78 alone in September. He is educating 60,000 pupils now in 213 schools. And he has 2,342 employees, all since 2009. The vast proportion of those employees are teachers. The vast proportion of those teachers have never had a job before. They come from the slums in which they teach. They understand the psychology of the children that they're speaking to. And his target is global domination. It's 10 million students and an IPO on NASDAQ. So that's the sort of entrepreneur I'm talking about when we're talking about high-capacity breakthrough businesses, people who are going to change the whole paradigm and are not frightened to take enormous risks. So that's a good example, but I love telling this next story too because, especially with my investors here, it's a great pleasure to say that we invest in shit. This is a sanitation business. It's those of you who know the area will be aware that the sewage system in a lot of these informal townships are terrible or non-existent. And the statistics are terrifying, actually. You'll find that about 8 million people in Kenya alone lack access to adequate sanitation. 80% of those slum dwellers, however, will pay something to use a toilet because they'd rather not be using what they call flying toilets, which is a plastic bag that they throw over the wall. However, the sanitation, poor sanitation causes the most unbelievable amount of disease. And they estimate that about 2% of GDP per annum of a country is often lost due to worker productivity from sanitation-related diseases. For kids, it's even worse. If you're under 5, you are more likely to die from diarrhea than you are from AIDS, malaria, and TB combined. So in terms of a real basic human need, there's a huge problem. So 3 MIT graduates decided that they were going to come up and do a research program a few years ago and design the sort of McDonald's of a toilet franchise, which in the picture on the right, you see it's called Fresh Life. The idea being that you build a hygienic, clean, well-lit cubicle like that. You then license it out to franchise it out to toilet operators. Typically, these toilet operators will own 1.5, so between 1 or 2 of these toilets. On the back of owning those toilets, they charge about 2 or 3 Kenyan shillings per use, or 2 or 3 euro cents. And that allows them, on average, to earn the equivalent of twice the national average wage. So it's a real economic asset for them to own a toilet. As a consequence, they look after it. They often put it alongside their duka, their shop, or whatever it is, and so it's a supplementary income stream. With that, they get a whole sort of business in a box and training on how to keep these toilets clean. And then Sanergy, our investee company, will go and collect the waste every day. And the beauty of that is that it means that we see the toilet every day. We can check that it's still clean and hygienic, and we lock the door if it's not, so we can keep the brand quality high. As a consequence of which, they collect the waste, and they use the waste to make organic fertilizer. Now, all fertilizers in Kenya are inorganic and are imported and are very expensive. So what these guys are doing are creating an organic fertilizer company with basically free inputs. So the business model is great. It's a cost-free inputs, unlimited supply, and the price of the competition is extremely high. Great business idea. Hasn't worked yet. We're still in the building process. But nevertheless, you can see that if the model works, it not only produces a very profitable business, but it's going to spawn many more hygienic toilets. So anyway, there's an example of the sort of businesses that we've been backing. And I have to say that, again, just want to repeat that to have institutional investors who are prepared to back a venture-style fund such as this is a fantastic breakthrough, I think, for our community. It's high risk. We're expecting a good 40% of our businesses to fail and deliver absolutely zero value, which is why the ones that succeed have to succeed at sufficient scale to really make the fund a decent return. But we do believe the opportunity is ripe for that now. And I won't go in great length because I'm supposed to be short. But essentially, why is it possible now? We've got sustained economic growth in the region. Many of you will know this already. 6 of the top 10 fastest growing countries in the world are African. There are 1 billion people in Africa now, rising to 2 billion earlier. And although Stuart was talking about more numbers in poverty, but there are more numbers in total. And actually said there are also more numbers who are not in poverty. And that represents a market-based opportunity, which is very exciting. Added to which, you've got rapid urbanization. One of the biggest problems of reaching these low-income markets is just the fact they're so remote, so hard to get to them, they're so dispersed. And therefore, when you're selling a low-value product, the distribution costs alone can rip out all your profits. By becoming more concentrated in cities, there's suddenly an opportunity to deliver more efficiently some of these basic goods and services. In addition, we've got improving governance. Up in 1988, there were only 3 democracies. There are now 17. The regulatory environment is becoming competitive for attracting direct investment from overseas. Plus, added to which, you've got a number of enabling platforms kicking up now. We've got the technologies which are going global, but we've also got people who are going global. The diaspora, who typically been educated overseas, can see that the growth opportunities in their home territories are now clocking in at 6 to 10% per annum, while the West has gone more or less ex-growth. So in a way, there's an exciting opportunity for them to go home. So there's a pool of bicultural, what we call bicultural re-aspora, people who are going to go back to their home territory, bringing with them some understanding of how capital markets work. And I think that represents one of our greatest opportunities because that is our pool of entrepreneurs, our pool of financiers, and the whole ecosystem which is needed to make this fly. So in essence, just to summarize, the Novastar Fund is looking for the next generation of exceptional entrepreneurs. We are essentially talent scouts. That's what we are. And we look for people who are going to design and execute innovative businesses that profitably serve the mass low-income markets with high-quality goods and services. I think the thing that's exciting about this is that these guys can not only generate large-scale benefits to low-income households, but they can also generate attractive financial returns, which is what's required to unlock this capital I was referring to earlier. And the reason we call the fund Novastar is because we're looking for those new stars. They have their forebears in every successful economy, whether it's the Cadburys or the Rowntrees or whoever it is we have in this country, to the next generation. That's what we need. They are the catalyst for innovation, accountability, efficiency, as well as the accumulation of wealth for the common good. It's an exciting time to be involved. And we see our role at Novastar to be the spark to this talent, which draws more entrepreneurship and private capital into the emerging markets of East Africa. And we all started this idea here. So after this afternoon session, network like mad. You never know, you might start a business which can hopefully be as exciting as this. So thanks very much, everybody. And I think I'm your last fund manager, so it's now down to the real action with the entrepreneurs. Thanks very much.